The crystal spires of Lumina Prime rose like frozen tears against the lavender sky, each architectural marvel a testament to precision and emotional control. Here, in the heart of the most advanced civilization in the known galaxy, Princess Zura stood as a living contradiction, a royal anomaly that challenged everything her people believed. Her diminutive frame, barely reaching a meter in height, seemed to vibrate with an internal energy that made the pristine council chambers uncomfortable. While other luminari maintained perfect, statue-like composure, Zora's iridescent skin rippled with colors that betrayed her every emotion, a trait considered both a genetic defect and a social embarrassment among her species. The luminari had long prided themselves on their ability to suppress emotional responses. Their evolutionary path had transformed emotion from a survival mechanism into something to be carefully controlled, measured, and ultimately minimized. Feelings were seen as primitive, a hindrance to rational thought and strategic decision-making. But Zara was different. Every sensation crashed through her like a tidal wave, every subtle emotional current surrounding her readable in the intricate color patterns that danced across her skin. Her royal advisors had tried everything: emotional suppression therapies, neural recalibration treatments, even genetic modification attempts. Nothing could dim the intensity of her perceptive abilities. Where other luminaries saw a weakness, Zara experienced a world of profound complexity. She could sense the microscopic shifts in emotional landscapes, detecting tensions, hopes, and fears that others couldn't even imagine. "Your Highness," her chief advisor spoke, his voice a calculated monotone. "The Royal Succession Council has convened to discuss your situation." The word situation hung in the air like a carefully placed blade, ready to slice away her royal status. The chamber itself seemed to breathe with tension. Luminary nobles sat in perfect geometric formations, their bodies rigid, faces as smooth and unreadable as polished glass. Zara's skin flickered between deep indigo, a sign of concern, and soft lavender, indicating a vulnerable emotional state. Her mother, the current planetary leader, sat at the chamber's apex. Unlike the typical maternal connection one might expect, her gaze remained clinical, analytical. "Your emotional instability presents a significant risk to our diplomatic standing," she stated, each word precisely articulated. A leader must be a beacon of stability, not a living canvas of uncontrolled emotional expression. Zora understood the stakes. In luminary society, royal succession wasn't about bloodline or traditional inheritance. It was about demonstrating the pinnacle of emotional control, the ability to navigate complex political landscapes with absolute rational precision. Her constant emotional fluctuations made her a liability, a potential embarrassment to generations of carefully cultivated diplomatic excellence. The younger members of the royal court watched her with a mixture of fascination and barely concealed disdain. Her skin told stories they were trained to suppress, stories of empathy, of deep connection, of feelings that ran far deeper than their carefully constructed societal norms. "I can be an asset," Zara tried to explain, her voice soft but carrying an unexpected strength. "My ability to read emotional landscapes isn't a weakness, it's a different kind of strength." But her words fell on ears conditioned to hear only absolute rational discourse. The council's decision seemed predetermined. Her royal titles would be stripped, her diplomatic potential erased. She would be relegated to a research position, studied as a genetic anomaly, her unique perceptive abilities reduced to a clinical observation. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. A communique arrived just as the final deliberations were about to begin. An invitation to an unprecedented interstellar diplomatic conference, a gathering of species so diverse, so complex, that traditional diplomatic approaches might prove insufficient. For the first time, a flicker of hope danced across Zora's skin. A brilliant, almost blinding shade of golden hope mixed with the deep green of potential. Something was coming. Something that would challenge everything her people believed about emotion, about connection, about what it truly meant to communicate and understand. The universe, it appeared, was about to teach the luminary a lesson they would not soon forget. The Interstellar Diplomatic Conference sprawled across 3 massive orbital stations, each a testament to galactic engineering and cooperative design. Delegates from hundreds of species gathered, their technological and biological diversity a stark contrast to the carefully controlled environment of the luminary homeworld. Marcus Reyes moved through the crowded reception area with a unique blend of curiosity and calm. Unlike most diplomatic representatives who focused solely on political strategies, he carried something far more valuable: a genuine interest in understanding different cultures. His background in anthropology and cross-cultural psychology made him an outlier among traditional diplomats. The conference hall buzzed with multiple translation systems, holographic interfaces, and the subtle electromagnetic communications of species that didn't rely on traditional verbal language. Amid this cacophony of interstellar communication, most delegates missed the subtle details, the micro-expressions, the barely perceptible emotional shifts that told stories far more complex than any official statement. Marcus noticed her immediately. While other delegates moved with calculated precision, the small luminary princess stood almost motionless, her skin a living canvas of emotional complexity. Where others saw a potential weakness, Marcus saw something extraordinary, a beam of profound perceptive capability. Zara's skin cycled through colors so rapidly, it was like watching a living emotional landscape. Deep blues of uncertainty, flashes of green suggesting curiosity, occasional bursts of golden hope, quickly tempered by silvery apprehension. To the other delegates, she was nearly invisible. To Marcus, she was the most fascinating presence in the entire conference. The initial diplomatic presentations droned on, a carefully choreographed dance of political posturing. Species representatives delivered prepared statements, each more carefully constructed than the last. Technological capabilities were compared, potential trade routes discussed, potential conflict zones analyzed, all with a sterile, emotionless precision that Marcus found increasingly frustrating. During a particularly long presentation about mineral rights in the outer spiral arm, Marcus noticed Zora's skin beginning to shift in increasingly agitated patterns. Deep purples of frustration mixed with sharp crimson edges of suppressed emotion. While other delegates appeared to listen passively, she was experiencing the entire presentation on a level no traditional communication method could capture. When a representative from the Krull Confederation began speaking, Zora's entire dermal layer transformed. Her colors became a complex symphony of emotional response. Dark blues of concern, sharp red edges of potential conflict, brief golden flashes that suggested hidden opportunities. Marcus couldn't help himself. While others continued their polite, disconnected listening, he moved closer to her. "Fascinating presentation, isn't it?" he said softly, his voice carrying a warmth that stood in stark contrast to the clinical tone of other delegates. Zara's skin flickered, surprise expressed through a rapid transition of colors. Most beings would have continued their formal diplomatic stance, but something in Marcus's genuine curiosity broke through her carefully maintained exterior. "You see more than just words," she responded, her voice soft but carrying an unexpected depth. It wasn't a question. It was an observation. Marcus smiled, genuinely surprised. Most people hear words. Some understand context. But you're experiencing the entire emotional landscape behind those words. Her skin shifted to a complex pattern of deep emerald green, a color suggesting intense interest mixed with cautious hope. No other species at the conference would have caught the nuanced emotional communication happening in that moment. The diplomatic conference continued around them, a massive machine of interstellar politics. But in that small space, something extraordinary was happening. A human who truly saw beyond surface communication had found a luminary who experienced communication as a living, breathing entity. Neither of them knew it yet, but this moment would change the course of galactic diplomacy forever. The universe, with its infinite complexity, had just introduced 2 beings who understood connection in a way no one else could comprehend. The diplomatic crisis erupted with the subtlety of a quantum cascade, spreading through the conference communication networks like a wildfire of potential conflict. The Krell Confederation's expansion plans threatened to destabilize nearly 17 established star systems, creating a powder keg of interstellar tension that threatened to ignite at any moment. In the central diplomatic chamber, holographic projections displayed contested star systems, each represented by intricate three-dimensional star maps that pulsed with potential conflict zones. Delegates from affected systems spoke in carefully measured tones, their words a veneer of diplomatic restraint barely concealing deep-seated anxieties. Marcus leaned closer to Zara, his voice low and measured. "They're not saying what they're really feeling," he murmured, watching the Krell representative's presentation. Zara's skin responded immediately, a complex tapestry of colors that mapped the emotional undercurrents in the room. Streaks of deep blue indicated underlying fear, sharp edges of crimson suggested suppressed anger, and subtle golden threads wove through her dermal layer, revealing potential paths of resolution. "The Krell are afraid," she whispered, her perception cutting through the diplomatic posturing. "Not of resistance, but of something deeper. They're expanding, but it's not about territory. It's about survival." The other delegates continued their standard approach, analyzing star charts, discussing trade routes, presenting military capabilities. But Marcus and Zara saw something entirely different. Where others saw a political problem, they perceived an intricate emotional landscape of fear, desperation, and hidden motivations. The Krell representative, a crystalline being whose body refracted light in complex geometric patterns, continued his presentation. Each carefully chosen word was a calculated move in a complex political chess game. But to Zara, his communication was transparent, layers of emotion that spoke volumes beyond his precise diplomatic language. Marcus pulled up a series of historical data streams, his fingers dancing across a holographic interface. "Look at their resource consumption patterns," he said, pointing to a series of graphs. "They're not expanding for conquest. They're running from something." Zara's skin shifted to a deep emerald green, the color of intense analytical focus. "Their home systems are dying," she realized, her empathetic abilities parsing information beyond mere statistical analysis. "This isn't aggression, it's desperation." The diplomatic chamber continued its careful dance of political positioning. Representatives from various star systems presented arguments, discussed potential military responses, and analyzed strategic implications. But Marcus and Zara had discovered something none of the other delegates could see. The heart of the conflict lay not in territory, but in survival. Their collaborative approach began to take shape. Where traditional diplomacy would involve military posturing or economic sanctions, they started mapping an entirely different solution. Marcus's strategic thinking, combined with Zara's emotional perception, created an approach that defied conventional diplomatic methods. "We need to address their core fear," Marcus explained, sketching out a preliminary communication strategy. "Not their territorial claims, but their underlying need for survival." Zara's skin flickered with a complex pattern of golden hope and deep blue understanding. "Communication is more than words," she responded. "It's about truly seeing the other's perspective." As the other delegates continued their traditional negotiations, Marcus and Zara began crafting a unique diplomatic intervention. They weren't just looking at star charts and resource allocations. They were mapping an emotional landscape, understanding the profound desperation driving the Krell Confederation's aggressive expansion. The conference continued around them, a massive machine of interstellar politics. But in their small corner, something extraordinary was happening. A human who understood strategic communication had found a partner who could perceive the emotional truth behind every diplomatic statement. The universe watched, unaware that a completely new approach to conflict resolution was taking shape, one that went far beyond traditional diplomatic strategies. Somewhere in the vast complexity of galactic politics, a solution was emerging, not through force, not through economic pressure, but through genuine understanding. The private consultation room hummed with a subtle energy, a stark contrast to the formal diplomatic chambers they had left behind. Holographic data streams danced around Marcus and Zara, creating a dynamic environment of information and possibility. "Your people see your empathy as a weakness," Marcus said, studying the intricate color patterns rippling across Zora's skin. "But it's actually your greatest strength." Zora's dermal layer shifted through a spectrum of colors. Deep blues of uncertainty, flashes of emerald green suggesting curiosity, delicate gold threads of emerging understanding. Her species had spent generations suppressing emotional responses, treating them as primitive relics of less evolved civilizations. Yet here was a human who saw her unique ability as something extraordinary. Marcus pulled up a series of historical conflict resolution databases, his fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. "Traditional diplomacy is like trying to solve a complex puzzle with only half the pieces," he explained. "Most negotiators look at surface-level data, resource allocations, territorial claims, economic interests. But they miss the most critical component, the emotional landscape that drives decision-making." He projected a series of diplomatic failure case studies. Each holographic display showed moments where carefully constructed agreements fell apart, not because of logical disagreements, but because of unaddressed emotional undercurrents. Zara's skin began to pulse with a complex narrative. Streaks of deep blue indicated the suppressed emotional pain of her own people, sharp crimson edges revealing the internal conflicts she had experienced, and subtle golden threads suggesting potential transformation. "Emotional intelligence isn't weakness," she responded, her voice carrying a newfound confidence. "It's the most sophisticated form of communication possible." Marcus nodded, pulling up a comparative analysis of diplomatic success rates. "Most species approach negotiation as a zero-sum game," he explained. "Win or lose. But true resolution comes from understanding the underlying motivations, the fears, the hopes that drive each party." They began to develop a revolutionary communication technique. Where traditional diplomatic approaches relied on verbal and written communication, their method incorporated a multi-layered approach. Marcus's strategic analysis would provide the logical framework, while Zara's empathetic perception would map the emotional landscape. "Imagine being able to detect the precise moment when a negotiation is about to fail," Marcus said, excitement building in his voice, not through words, but through the emotional shifts happening beneath the surface. Zara's skin responded with a brilliant display of colors. Deep emerald green of intellectual excitement, golden threads of potential, soft lavender of hope. She was no longer seeing her ability as a genetic anomaly, but as a profound evolutionary advantage. They spent hours refining their approach. Marcus showed her how to structure her emotional perceptions into actionable diplomatic insights. Zara taught him how to read the subtle emotional currents that traditional communication methods completely missed. "Your people believe emotions cloud judgment," Marcus observed. "But emotions are actually the most sophisticated form of data processing possible. They're not a hindrance. They're an advanced communication system." The breakthrough was more than just a diplomatic technique. It was a fundamental reimagining of interspecies communication. Traditional negotiation assumed a rational, detached approach. Their method recognized that every decision, every conflict, every resolution was fundamentally driven by emotional experiences. As the holographic displays continued to dance around them, Marcus and Zara were creating something unprecedented. A communication method that didn't just bridge cultural differences, but fundamentally transformed how different species could understand each other. "We're not just solving conflicts," Zara said, her skin now a vibrant, complex landscape of potential. "We're teaching different species how to truly see each other." The universe, with its infinite complexity, was about to learn a new language, a language that went beyond words, beyond technology, beyond traditional understanding, a language of genuine connection. In that moment, what had once been considered a weakness became the most powerful diplomatic tool in known space. The galactic news networks buzzed with unprecedented energy. Something was changing in the diplomatic landscape, and everyone could feel it. Marcus and Zara's collaborative approach had begun to challenge every established protocol of interstellar negotiations. Their first major test came with the expanding crisis involving the Krell Confederation, a challenge that would either validate their revolutionary method or expose it as a naive experiment. Diplomatic channels from multiple star systems began requesting their unique consultation. Where traditional mediators had failed, their approach promised something different, a way of understanding conflicts that went beyond surface-level negotiations. Zara's royal family watched with a mixture of skepticism and barely concealed intrigue. The daughter they had once considered removing from royal succession was now becoming a focal point of galactic attention. Her skin continued to tell stories that no traditional diplomatic report could capture, a living, breathing communication system that defied conventional understanding. The conference room selected for their critical negotiation was a marvel of interstellar design. Holographic interfaces lined the walls. Translation systems hummed with multiple frequency bands, and representatives from 6 different star systems sat around a circular table that seemed to float above the floor. Marcus approached the negotiation with a calm that surprised the other delegates. Where previous mediators had arrived with stacks of legal documents and complex trade proposals, he carried nothing but a small datapad and an unexpected sense of genuine curiosity. Zara's presence was even more remarkable. Unlike the stiff, controlled representatives from other species, she moved with a fluidity that seemed to challenge the very concept of diplomatic formality. Her skin shifted through colors that told a story more complex than any spoken language. The primary conflict centered on resource-rich star systems along the border of multiple territories. Traditional negotiations had devolved into increasingly hostile posturing, with military mobilizations becoming a genuine threat. Each species presented carefully crafted arguments, their words a veneer of diplomatic civility, barely concealing deep-seated tensions. But Marcus and Zara saw something entirely different. "They're not hearing each other," Zara whispered, her skin displaying a complex pattern of deep blue and sharp crimson. "Each delegation is so focused on their own survival that they've stopped listening." Marcus nodded, his fingers moving across the datapad. "We need to shift from a zero-sum approach to a collaborative solution." Their strategy was unconventional. Instead of presenting competing claims or economic analyses, they began by mapping the emotional landscape of the conflict. Marcus used strategic communication techniques, while Zora's empathetic perception revealed the hidden motivations behind each delegation's stance. The other representatives looked confused at first. This was not how diplomatic negotiations typically proceeded. Where were the legal documents? The trade proposals? The carefully constructed compromise statements? But something extraordinary began to happen. As Marcus guided the conversation, and Zora's skin displayed the emotional undercurrents, the delegates started to truly hear each other. The Vex Collective, known for their rigid technological approach, began to show subtle signs of understanding. The Mira Confederation's representatives, who had arrived with defensive postures, slowly relaxed. "We're not just solving a territorial dispute," Marcus explained. "We're helping you understand each other's fundamental needs." Zora's skin became a living communication tool. Waves of color showed the shifting emotional landscape. Fear transforming into cautious hope, defensive anger melting into potential collaboration. The galactic observers watched in stunned silence. This was not traditional diplomacy. This was something entirely new. As the negotiation progressed, the impossible began to happen. Delegations that had been preparing for potential conflict were now discussing collaborative resource management. Potential military tensions were being replaced by shared development strategies. The universe was watching a revolution in communication unfold, one emotional insight at a time. The confrontation with the Krell Confederation arrived like a storm brewing on a distant horizon. Massive battleships positioned themselves along contested star system borders, their weapon systems humming with potential energy. Traditional diplomatic channels had failed spectacularly, leaving only the slimmest hope of avoiding a full-scale interstellar conflict. Marcus and Zara stood in the central communication hub, a vast chamber designed to facilitate the most complex interstellar negotiations. Holographic displays surrounded them, each showing different perspectives of the unfolding crisis. Military strategists had already concluded that war was inevitable. Political analysts predicted catastrophic losses on all sides. But they saw something entirely different. Zara's skin became a living map of emotional complexity. Deep currents of blue indicated the profound fear driving the Krell's aggressive positioning. Streaks of crimson revealed the underlying desperation, while subtle golden threads suggested hidden vulnerabilities that no traditional intelligence report had detected. "They're not preparing for conquest," Zara whispered, her voice carrying a profound understanding. "They're preparing for survival." Marcus studied the holographic displays, his fingers tracing complex communication patterns. Every military movement, every strategic position. It's not about territory. It's about something much deeper. The Krell delegation arrived with an intimidating presence. Their communication systems bristled with technological complexity, each representative a living embodiment of advanced computational thinking. They expected a traditional negotiation, a series of calculated exchanges, potential concessions, strategic positioning. Instead, they found Marcus and Zara. The initial moments of the negotiation were tense. Krell representatives presented their territorial claims with mathematical precision, each statement a carefully constructed argument backed by vast amounts of data. Their communication style was the antithesis of emotional expression, pure, cold, logical reasoning. But Marcus understood something fundamental about communication that went beyond words or data. "We know why you're expanding," he said quietly, his words cutting through the technical jargon like a precision instrument. "We understand the real motivation behind your actions." The Krell delegation froze. Their communication systems, designed to process millions of data points per second, seemed to hesitate. Zara stepped forward, her skin displaying a complex emotional landscape that defied their computational understanding. Where they expected rational arguments, she offered something far more powerful, genuine understanding. "Your home systems are dying," she said, her voice carrying a depth of empathy that their computational minds had never encountered. "This isn't about conquest. This is about finding a new home." The holographic displays began to shift. Marcus pulled up detailed analyses of the Krell's home star systems, ecological collapses, resource depletion, systemic failures that no amount of technological innovation could overcome. Each data point told a story of a species facing potential extinction. The Krell representatives experienced something unprecedented. Their communication systems, designed for pure logical exchange, encountered an approach that went beyond data, a method of understanding that touched something deeper than computational reasoning. Zara's emotional perception mapped their internal responses: fear, hope, desperation, and a profound desire for survival began to replace their defensive posturing. Her skin became a living translation device, revealing emotional nuances that their computational language could never express. Marcus presented an alternative. Not a traditional territorial compromise, but a comprehensive relocation and resource-sharing strategy. It wasn't just a diplomatic solution. It was a pathway to survival that acknowledged the Krell's fundamental needs. The breakthrough came not through military might, not through complex legal negotiations, but through genuine understanding. Weapon systems powered down. Strategic positioning became collaborative planning. What had seemed like an inevitable conflict transformed into a potential partnership. The universe watched in stunned silence as two beings, a human and a small alien, demonstrated a communication method that went beyond any known diplomatic approach. They hadn't just prevented a war. They had shown that true resolution comes from seeing the humanity, or in this case, the fundamental essence, in every species. The ripple effect of Marcus and Zara's diplomatic breakthrough spread across the galaxy like a transformative wave, challenging fundamental assumptions about communication, diplomacy, and interspecies understanding. Zara's royal family watched in astonishment as their once dismissed daughter became a focal point of galactic attention. The luminary, a species that had prided itself on emotional suppression, found themselves at the center of a profound cultural revolution. Young luminary began to see emotional perception not as a weakness, but as an advanced form of intelligence. Academic institutions across multiple star systems began redesigning diplomatic training programs, where previous curricula focused on rational analysis and strategic positioning. New approaches emphasized emotional intelligence, cross-cultural empathy, and nuanced communication techniques. Marcus found himself at the center of an unexpected academic and diplomatic storm. Human communication experts sought to understand how a single anthropologist had revolutionized interstellar diplomacy. His background in cultural studies and psychology became a blueprint for a new approach to understanding complex interactions. The transformation was most visible in the younger generations. Luminary students began exploring their emotional capabilities, no longer seeing their natural sensitivities as something to be suppressed. Educational systems that had once focused on emotional control now celebrated emotional perception as a critical skill. "We were wrong," Zara's mother admitted during a pivotal royal council meeting, her voice carrying a weight of vulnerability rarely heard among luminary leadership. Emotional intelligence is not a weakness. It is our most sophisticated form of communication. Marcus worked closely with luminary educational institutions, developing training programs that helped species understand the profound depth of emotional communication. Where traditional diplomatic approaches had failed, their method offered a new pathway to understanding. The Krell Confederation became the most visible testament to their approach. What had begun as a potential conflict transformed into a collaborative resettlement and resource-sharing initiative. Other species watched in amazement as the Krell, once seen as potential aggressors, became partners in innovative survival strategies. Diplomatic conferences underwent a complete transformation. Gone were the days of rigid, emotionless negotiations. The new approach emphasized understanding, empathy, and genuine connection. Delegates began to see beyond territorial claims and economic interests, focusing instead on the fundamental needs and emotions driving each species' actions. Zara's unique ability became a subject of scientific and diplomatic study. Researchers discovered that her empathetic perception was not a genetic anomaly, but a potentially evolutionary advance in communication. Her skin, once seen as a liability, was now studied as a sophisticated communication system that went beyond traditional linguistic barriers. The impact extended beyond diplomatic circles. Cultural exchange programs flourished. Species that had previously viewed each other with suspicion began to develop genuine understanding. Museums created new exhibits exploring emotional intelligence, showcasing how communication went far beyond verbal or written language. Marcus found himself lecturing at institutions across multiple star systems. His presentations were more than academic discussions. They were transformative experiences that challenged fundamental assumptions about communication, understanding, and connection. Empathy is not weakness, he would explain to packed auditoriums. It is the most advanced form of intelligence we have discovered. The luminary royal court, once prepared to strip Zara of her titles, now celebrated her as a visionary. She became a bridge between traditional diplomatic approaches and a new, more nuanced understanding of interspecies communication. Their partnership became a symbol of something greater than a diplomatic breakthrough. It represented a fundamental shift in how different species could understand and interact with each other. The boundaries between species began to blur, replaced by a deeper recognition of shared experiences and emotions. Young diplomats from across the galaxy sought to learn their approach. Educational programs developed new methodologies that incorporated emotional perception, cultural empathy, and nuanced communication techniques. The universe was changing. What had once seemed like insurmountable differences between species now became opportunities for genuine connection. Marcus and Zara had shown that true understanding came not from technological might or strategic positioning, but from the ability to truly see and feel the experiences of others. In the vast complexity of interstellar space, a new language of communication was emerging, a language of genuine empathy, understanding, and connection. The observation deck of the Galactic Diplomatic Research Station offered a panoramic view of space, a vast canvas of stars, nebulae, and the intricate web of interstellar connections they had helped create. Marcus and Zara stood together, reflecting on a journey that had transformed not just diplomatic relations, but the fundamental understanding of communication across different species. Years had passed since their first meeting at the Interstellar Conference. What had begun as an unlikely partnership had reshaped the way civilizations understood each other. The stars outside seemed to shimmer with the potential of new connections, new understandings. "We did more than solve conflicts," Zara said, her skin displaying a complex tapestry of reflective colors. Deep blues of memory, golden threads of hope, soft greens of continued potential. "We showed that communication is an art form more complex than any technology." Marcus nodded, his hand resting gently near hers, a gesture of connection that transcended species boundaries. "Every conflict is a misunderstanding waiting to be understood," he reflected. "We simply learn to listen differently." Their collaborative approach had become a standard in diplomatic training across multiple star systems. Educational institutions now taught what they called empathetic communication, a methodology that went far beyond traditional negotiation techniques. Young diplomats from hundreds of species studied their work, learning to see beyond surface-level interactions. The Krell Confederation, once on the brink of a desperate expansion, had found new hope. Their relocation and resource-sharing initiative had become a model of interspecies cooperation. Entire star systems that would have been battlegrounds were now centers of collaborative development. Zara's people had undergone a profound transformation. The Luminary, once rigid in their emotional suppression, now celebrated emotional intelligence as a critical form of advanced perception. Young Luminary no longer saw their empathetic abilities as a weakness, but as a sophisticated communication system. "Do you remember," Marcus asked, "how they wanted to remove you from royal succession?" A soft shimmer of amused colors danced across Zora's skin, a subtle laugh that needed no words. Her royal family now held her up as an example of true leadership, of seeing beyond traditional boundaries. Their work had revealed something fundamental about intelligent life. Communication was never just about exchanging information. It was about creating genuine understanding, about seeing the essential experiences that connected different beings. The Galactic Research Station itself was a testament to their approach. Designed with input from multiple species, it incorporated communication methods that went beyond verbal or written language. Holographic interfaces responded to emotional nuances. Meeting spaces were configured to facilitate genuine connection rather than positional negotiations. "We didn't just change diplomatic protocols," Zora observed. "We changed how different species perceive each other." Marcus reflected on their journey. A human anthropologist and a small alien with extraordinary perceptive abilities had done what entire diplomatic corps had failed to do for generations. They had shown that true resolution came from genuine understanding, from the ability to see beyond surface-level differences. The station's communication systems hummed softly, a symphony of different frequency bands, translation technologies, and emotional perception algorithms they had helped develop. Each technological advance was built on the fundamental principle they had demonstrated. Connection requires more than information. It requires empathy. Young diplomats from different species moved through the station, their interactions a living demonstration of the new communication paradigm. Where previous generations might have seen insurmountable differences, they now saw opportunities for connection. "We're still learning," Marcus said, watching the young diplomats. "Every interaction is a chance to understand something new." Zora's skin reflected a complex pattern of hope and continued potential. The universe was vast, filled with countless species, endless opportunities for understanding. Their work had opened a door, but there was always more to discover. As the stars continued their eternal dance outside the observation deck, Marcus and Zara stood as living proof that the most powerful technology was not found in advanced weaponry or complex computational systems. The most advanced technology was the ability to genuinely see and understand another being. The universe watched, continuing to unfold its infinite complexity, one moment of genuine connection at a time.